Hi, everyone. Welcome to Beyond Family Scapegoating Abuse. I'm Rebecca Mandeville, psychotherapist and author of Rejected, Shamed, and Blamed, Help and Hope for Adults in the Family Scapegoat Role. So every week on Wednesday, I'm going to release a video that answers a subscriber question. So I hope you'll take a minute to subscribe if you haven't already, and tap the notification bell so you get informed of new videos and also community posts. And if you haven't checked out our community post section, I encourage you to do so. It's on the homepage of this channel. Today's subscriber question is, can you say more about the family projective identification process and how this might lead to sibling estrangement? What a great question. If you haven't already, you might want to take a minute and check out the video I have on the family projective identification process, which this question refers to. And I'm going to link to that in the description of this video and in the pinned comment, along with an article I wrote about the family projective identification process. The family projective identification process has been discussed and explored in the field of family systems for literally decades and decades. And Murray Bowen, one of the first and very renowned at this point family systems theorists, talked about the family projective identification process extensively. There's also been research on this concept. And for me, to understand what I call family scapegoating abuse, when the scapegoating is chronic and persistent and extreme, to the point where it can traumatize the target of the scapegoating, sometimes lifelong. The scapegoating often lasts lifelong. That is an important concept for you to be aware of. Family roles have been attached and described in conjunction with dysfunctional family systems for a long time. It's so important that you realize that scapegoating can happen in any dysfunctional family, not just where there's someone heading up the family or someone in the family that has a lot of power who is a narcissist. Why is this important? It's important because even if there is not a narcissist in the family system, there can still be the phenomenon of the family projective identification process going on. And when you are caught in that process and you are the scapegoated family member, it is nearly impossible, if not impossible, for you to get your family to see what's happening and how you have been victimized in a way by systemic bullying and a system-wide belief in a distorted reality about who you are and your character. And it's this system-wide belief system that is carried along by the family projective identification process. Think of it like an oil slick. It's just spreading, perhaps since you were very young, this distorted narrative about you and who you are. This is where we have to talk about the fact that dysfunctional families are very similar to cult systems. And if your siblings are in a cult system or a system that's functioning very similarly to a cult, then they're on the Kool-Aid and they are being carried along by this oil slick, this family projective identification process that's coding you with this distorted narrative. It's no wonder that siblings are going to be inoculated into this story about you for however long it's been going on. For some people, since birth, or I said in last week's video, in utero, if the child wasn't wanted, that energy of rejection is going toward the infant or the child, sometimes pre-birth. Therefore, in this environment where we have either a malignant narcissist heading up the family who rewards those who buy into the family narratives, the people who are on the Kool-Aid, so to speak, and punishes those who aren't on the Kool-Aid, or whether it's the family projective identification process common to any dysfunctional family, your siblings have been inoculated into the damaging scapegoat narrative and possibly are even rewarded for aligning themselves with the family power holders, most often the parent. What can be very surprising is when you learn that this has happened and your siblings believe these things about you, because that might not have been evident sometimes for years. You might have even thought you had good relationships with one or all of your siblings, and then be shocked, stunned, even traumatized when you find out they actually believe the same narrative that the power holding family members did who scapegoated you. What became clearly evident to me during the course of my research on FSA, which has run for several years now in different forms, as well as family systems in general and research that's been done there, particularly in regard to what is called in the family systems field, the identified patient or family IP. We know that when the family homeostasis shifts, roles are shifting as well. So if a role's been vacated by a parent, a scapegoating parent, that role as part of the rebalancing of the family homeostasis will likely be filled by a dominant sibling. So let me give you an example. A parent who has dementia and isn't oriented and doesn't know even where they are half the time, much less remember all of their scapegoating narratives about you, you shouldn't be surprised if one day you find a sibling saying the same exact things about you, even a sibling you thought understood you or cared about you or you were close to at one time. And when I say the same exact things, I mean just that. You may literally hear the voice of your dead or infirm or demented parent who's no longer capable of scapegoating you coming out of the mouth of your sibling. It can be, as I said, quite traumatizing and shocking. I have stories from client and more than one where this happened literally at the funeral of the parent, the dead parent that had done the scapegoating or was driving the scapegoating. And they have been so confused and not understood what's happening. How could this be coming out of their siblings? Can you imagine being at the graveside of your parent and grieving and having one or more siblings walk up to you and say, "We know you took mom's paintings or mom's jewelry and you've done no such thing"? Can you imagine that? And sometimes it's all the siblings because of the family projective identification process. They were inoculated and you didn't know it until a parent vacated their role as family power holder because of their infirmities or through death. And the family's rebalancing and trying to recreate the old homeostasis. And part of that balance demands and requires you remain the family scapegoat, quote unquote. And if your siblings are all caught up in this family projective identification process, to try to go up against that, to try to explain what might be happening, if you even know about family systems, most people don't. I'm trying to bring some of that back a little bit, and I know some of the therapists on YouTube are as well. They're not going to be able to hear you, and you're going where angels fear to tread, in that you very likely could be traumatized even further, because the more you try to explain, the more crazy you look. You may already know that one. You may have already experienced that. So there's no easy or quick answer to a question like, can the family projective identification process lead to sibling estrangement? But yes, so these few examples I've given illustrate how the family projective identification process can lead to sibling estrangement, even with siblings you may have thought you had good relationships with prior to a parent dying or becoming infirm or incapacitated in some way. So this answer is not going to apply to every situation, but I can say that a high percentage of sibling estrangement would, in my opinion, tie in to either the family projective identification process, or there's a very strong influential narcissist or malignant narcissist heading up the family that people are afraid of, so they have to go along with everything they say and everything they do. So if you're on the outs with the family narcissist, you're going to be on the outs with the siblings as well. But the family projective identification process is a more subtle, unconscious process. So for those of you who don't relate to having a strong narcissist heading up the family that's scapegoating you, then you are probably looking at a situation where there is a family projective identification process happening and your siblings are caught up in it. And unless they wake up to it, sooner or later, you are probably going to find that on some level they have bought into the scapegoat narrative. It just may not show up till you have the scapegoating parent become incapacitated or die. If you learned something from this video, I hope you'll subscribe and do tap the notification bell so that you're alerted when I post something in our community board on the homepage of this channel or when I release a new video. And please give a thumbs up to this video so YouTube knows to put it on other people's home feeds, because there's people out there suffering who need to hear this message. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you soon.